the stress levels in your home feeling pretty high? Or has your get up and go got up and gone? Well, don't worry, you're in great company because on today's Mum Show, we're getting real about stress. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Mum Show. I am super happy to be with you today and I'm joined by Catherine Hill, Director of Care for the Family. How are you doing?
I'm well and it's really great to be with you.
Good. And psychotherapist Emma Brown. You okay, Emma?
I'm doing really well, thank you, Marina.
And on today's episode, we are getting real about stress. Stress levels in families. Okay, we need to be honest with ourselves before we go any further. I need to know your mum triggers for stress. Like, what is it that would get your blood boiling?
Oh gosh, which one do we choose? If I'm really honest, I would love to say, as a psychotherapist in the mornings, I am lovely and calm and therapeutic, and I'm asking my children how are they feeling, but actually mornings are really, really stressful. I'm not the most organised person, and while my eldest is ultra organised, my youngest is exactly like me, so we clash on a daily basis to do with, you know, just getting out of the house on time. So definitely the morning routine is always a bit of a tricky. Yeah, I very, very rarely drop the kids off and I'm feeling centred and calm.
That is good to know. What's yours, Catherine?
I agree with the deadlines one, getting people out of the house. I think mine would be when they would squabble and fight. I would just want to have this lovely, you know, calm home without somebody kicking somebody or pinching them or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just used to say, why can't you get on? I have to say, just to give people hope if they're in that area of family life at the moment. So we couldn't even get back from school without somebody doing something that I didn't want them to do. But now they're really good friends, now they're older. So it does end.
There is hope.
Yeah, that would be the thing that would really, really wind me up, I think.
I wasn't going to go for that, but now you said it, I'm like, that is really stressful, actually. I find myself sometimes when somebody starts arguing, I'm just like, just don't. Just don't. Like, that would be the last straw for me right now. You just need to stop and be nice to each other. It's hard, isn't it? Gosh, I was going to say probably bedtime is stressful for me because I think my children really struggle to get to sleep. And I feel like I've done everything in the parenting handbook to put my children to bed well, and therefore I deserve a restful evening. And they are old, you know, they're 11 and 9, and my oldest, she's getting better because she has audiobooks. But they just, do you ever notice your children are best friends at bedtime? Like, all of a sudden,
gang up together, yeah.
They have like the most wonderful games that they can play, and life is just so hilarious. And my daughter will always be like, oh, but mummy, you know, me and Ruben really want to watch this film together, and he never watches films with me. And you're like, this is so stressful. But it's just, I guess, the beginning of the day, the end of the day, the arguing all through the day, like, it can be really stressful. Just normal family life, aside from everything we've been through in 2020, it can be stressful, can't it?
Yeah, it really, really can. And I think for this generation of children, there are other factors as well.
Yeah.
I heard a wonderful story that was this, it was a psychiatrist, I think, was giving a talk, and they were talking about the different stresses on children, and somebody in the audience was saying, you know, they're just snowflakes, they just need to get on with it. When I was their age, and the psychiatrist interrupted her and said, you were never their age. And I thought, wow, it's so true that they're living in a different world than we grew up in, and we need to take that into account.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really powerful. And also we are parenting in an age that no one's parented in before.
Yeah.
So we're all so new at this, aren't we?
Yeah, we're all doing it for the first time, aren't we? Particularly with social media. You know, there's I think even when we were growing up, we could come home and our home was our home, and it felt very kind of separate and safe and cut off. But actually now there's no end to that, is there? There's like a constant, even, you know, and I think as parents we're just as kind of as guilty, really, that, you know, it's often the first thing we reach when we pick up the phone in the morning, and, you know, even before we've probably said hello to our children, we've been bombarded with all the external stresses of the world. We know what the headlines are. We know, you know, just all the, you know, what's going wrong in the world. We're just, our brains are flooded before we've even said hello to our partners or our children.
It's really easy, I think, to carry the world stress on top of your family stress and the things you've got to deal with. I mean, do either of you know, what are the statistics? Are we seeing stress on a rise, or is it the same as it's always been?
Oh no, I think it's definitely on the rise, and I think it's what is. I mean, maybe we need to ask the question: what is stress, and what impact does it have? And I think, you know, stress is anything, either externally or internally, that has an impact on our nervous systems. And I think as humans, there is good stress. And there's what we call toxic stress. You know, we all need that stress response, that fight, flight, freeze response to kind of, you know, help us survive. And, you know, for things like, you know, revising for a test, we need that buzz, we need that alertness to make us perform better. And that, you know, we actually need that. But as humans, we are not built to live in that level of heightened stress response for a prolonged period of time. And I think in this current situation that we're in, not only because of the pandemic and everything else that's happened in 2020, but also, you know, just daily life is becoming so, the demands, the expectations, our nervous systems are, you know, they're kind of being put under so much pressure all the time. And I think as humans, we're always trying to get back to that place of kind of what we call regulation, that kind of place of calm in our nervous system, and, you know, whether that's you know, what we call overperforming, we can you know, we need to work harder, or, you know, kind of end up burning the candle at both ends, just to kind of manage our stress levels. Or some people, we go the other way, and we kind of go into like an underperforming place where we cut off from it, or we try to numb out by, you know, watching a whole series of Netflix, or, you know, or even...
I've never done that. Never done that in my life.
We all have our own ways, don't we, to manage stress, but often those ways could actually, even though they help in the short term, they can often lead to kind of a longer term impact, really. So we need to be mindful about how we manage the stress.
Yeah, I had a good analogy, what you're saying about what it does to our nervous system, with it, stress being a bit like a fire alarm. So cortisol, that's right, isn't it, is the chemical that is produced. And it is really important if we're faced with a grizzly bear or a number one bus out of control or whatever, because it is that fight or flight. And it's like that fire alarm goes off. But fire alarms can also go off when not just when the building's burning down, but when the toast has just caught a little bit. So there's a lot of the time now where, because our children are living, and we are, in such a stressful environment, that trigger is happening, and then we're not having to flee or whatever, and then that builds up in our system, which then affects our emotional and mental well-being.
Absolutely.
And it can affect our physical well-being as well, can't it? And sort of like, I think it can impact inflammation, or, you know, different areas like that, which isn't particularly helpful, not what you want to be going for. I think it's interesting as well, because you can trigger each other's stress, can't you? Like, you just know when, especially you're in a family, if one person's stressed, it's really easy for it to be passed around, and all of a sudden everybody's stressed. And like in our family, the number of times one of us, including the kids, will just say, we need to reset. We need to reset. Everybody's just got stressed now. And we usually say, as like, you know, our calming people down, right, we all love each other and everyone's nice. Okay? We all love each other and everyone's nice. That's like our foundation.
Mantra.
That's our beliefs. We all love each other and everyone's nice. Right, now what do we need to deal with? Because it can just, I don't know, it feels contagious sometimes, doesn't it?
Well, I think we need to remember that children are like sponges. They literally soak up the emotional energy. And the people that they soak that up the most for is obviously particularly when they're very young, is parents. So and we need to be mindful that even the way we look at ourselves in the mirror with that kind of critical eye, the way that we're driving and feeling very kind of on edge or kind of a bit road ragey, our children are soaking that up. They're in tune with it, and it's giving them that constant message. So in order for us to be able to help help our children regulate their stress levels, we absolutely need to be doing that for ourselves first and foremost.
So talking about that then, there are obviously some ways. You've talked a little bit about numbing and the unhelpful ways of managing stress. What are some of the ways that you find positive for dealing with our own stress before, it's that analogy of the being on an aeroplane, isn't it? Putting your own mask on before you help somebody else's. Yeah. What are the first steps that, if I'm a mum and I'm having a crazy busy day and I'm feeling stressed out, what things can I go to try and improve my stress levels?
Yeah, I think being intentional about it, remembering, I think that we are, as a lovely phrase, you're the keeper of the atmosphere in the home.
Like that.
And so exactly as Emma was saying, our children will pick that up and the whole thing just gets ratcheted up. And so one thing I've found helpful is just pausing and thinking, okay, what is it that I'm really worried about? Is it the presenting thing, or is there something else going on? Is there something going on at work that I'm worried about, and actually because of that I'm now ratty with the kids or whatever? And what are the things that I can control, and what are the things I can't control? And the things that you can control, you can do something about, and things that you can't control, then are the things that, you can look at other ways of not feeling so stressed about. But I found that quite helpful.
Yeah. So it's being curious again, isn't it? And just asking yourself, what's kind of going on. And I think that's the exact opposite to the numbing.
Yes.
The exact opposite to I'm going to zone out in front of the TV or zone out in a chocolate cake or zone out, whatever it is that you go to do. This is like the exact opposite.
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to that kind of automatic response, don't we? I think we tend to learn these patterns of coping quite early on in childhood, and they do tend to stay with us. So if you are somebody who, kind of manages stress by working harder and harder and doing more and more and performing, kind of striving, then that will continue. And if you are somebody who tends to manage stress by kind of numbing out and pushing it down and not going there, then that you will tend to do that over and over again. So the first step is always going to be create that awareness.
Yeah.
Stop, pause. What am I doing? Am I doing this in response to the way I'm feeling? And actually, we've got to recognise that we're feeling stressed before we can do anything about it. Because quite often we're so used to this feeling, this constant kind of what we call kind of either hyper aroused state, where we're just kind of living on edge in that state for a long period of time. We've got to be aware of it first, and then once we have that awareness of, oh, actually, I'm feeling quite stressed, or I'm feeling, not okay in my body. What do I need to do? It's then being able to then consciously decide to do something different. One of the things that could be really helpful is a guy who we really like on the Mum Show is Dan Siegel, isn't it?
We do.
And he's a child psychiatrist, and he talks about do you remember a few years ago we had the kind of the 5 a day, the healthy kind of like the plate of the 5 fruits and vegetables a day. Well, he talks about kind of having a healthy mind platter, and there is like 7 activities in a day that if you did something from each of those, then that kind of sets you up for having, managing stress and having a more kind of healthy way of being. And I think it's a really good way to kind of model that for our children. Now, I can quickly go through the 7 if I can remember them all. So it's sleep time.
Yeah. Sleep time, yeah.
Sleep time, so that's obviously really important, good quality sleep, and that has a huge impact on our stress levels. Focus time, so that could be when we're actually doing our work, kind of like having a period of time where we can focus, we can be attentive and alert. Let's think about the other one. Downtime, which is when you intentionally turn the Netflix on and chill out and just wind down, do whatever it is that you want to do. There is time in, which is kind of, actually kind of that pausing, taking time for yourself, tuning in, being able to be present and aware, and just kind of, just time to reflect, whether that's kind of journaling or whatever it is that you want to do. There's playtime, which is one of my favourites. And that is, literally doing something that brings you joy, whatever that is. It could be a hobby, it could be just getting on the floor and playing with your child and following their lead. And then I think the last one is... time
in nature?
It's movement.
Movement,
it's being able to, so moving your bodies.
Exercise.
And we know that, if we're in a stressed state, sometimes just moving your body can actually shift, and it can help to regulate yourself. So time in nature is, for all sorts of brilliant reasons, really good for your mental health as well. So
that's really good. I heard a similar thing in relation to how we can help our children, which was you look at their schedule for the week, whatever that looks like, and anything that is sort of stressful or they're having to try hard for or learning or whatever is red. Kind of neutral things are orange, and then the fun stuff is green. And it was saying make sure that there's a kind of 3-to-1 ratio, green to red, because without realising it, sometimes our children can be on this treadmill as well of achievement and striving, and we need to help them get off.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite helpful.
No, I love that.
Yeah. It is really interesting. I think as well, I've heard you say to me before, Catherine, about the importance of friendship. And I think, when we're trying to get on top of stress, it's really helpful to have somebody, whether that's a partner or whether that's a friend or, your own family or parents. It's really helpful to have someone to kind of check in with, isn't it? Because so often, as you're saying, what we're getting stressed about isn't really what we're getting stressed about.
And that was the 7th one. I'm so pleased that you've done that.
We're attuned.
Connection time. That's
Didn't notice you'd only done 6.
That's the 7th connection time. So, and it, how could I have forgotten that? That is so important that we have that time every day to connect with others, to help us to feel safe and cared for. Yeah.
I have a list on my phone of people that I'll just call when I'm stressed out. In fact, I once phoned Emma up because I was just so stressed about what to make for dinner, which sounds ridiculous. And usually I don't care, but on this particular day, I'd left it too long to eat. It's like, Emma, I just can't do it. I just don't know what to make. She was like, oh, Marina, go and have a piece of toast. And everything will be fine. But it is just, living this world can be tough sometimes, can't it? And sometimes the small things knock us over the edge.
No, and if we're parenting on our own, that's super important to have, your team around you, people that can speak into our lives as well.
Absolutely.
I think. And if we're parenting with our partner, then again, that might be a stressful issue. Actually, if we're going through a season that we all go through, where that's quite tough. But also having other people that can speak into our lives. So we've got another couple, and we have met together, I think probably now for nearly 20 years, once a fortnight, and we can say anything to each other. And they will be the people that say, hey, you look like you're being a bit irritable at the moment, do you need to take some time out or whatever? And it's a really precious thing.
It is, it's essential, isn't it? So I'm going to let you guys have a little listen to a conversation with my son, Ruben. And Ruben's 9 years old, and he has ADHD and a language disorder, and sometimes that gives him what's called a sensory overload. So for him, huge amounts of stress, but he'll use the term sensory overload for this. And he really wanted to get on camera and just help people understand some of the methods that he uses when he's feeling overwhelmed. So meet Ruben.
Hi guys, my name is Ruben and I'm 9 years old, and I got dyslexia and ADHD, and it makes me very creative. My mum says I like a border collie. Sometimes I get sensory overloads. It feels quite frustrating, and it feels like you just want to get rid of it fast. You feel like you just want to shout and shout and shout.
What would you say causes stress?
Stress, probably waking up with snoring, and probably loads of shouting, and probably sometimes if you're asleep and those are bonfires come out, you just wanna scream out loud because how annoying it is. So, and also, I might miss this, but Lego gets rid of the sensory overload.
How does Lego get rid of the sensory overload, Ruben?
Because you gotta think, and you gotta like, oh, I would like to build that. Oh, that's such a good idea. And plus, it's quiet playing. It's just playing quiet, not stuff like probably just silent, isn't it?
What about when you're on a bike? Does that help you calm down?
Yes, it really does. It also cools you down, and it gets rid of sensory overloads because maybe you like to be with your own sometimes on pedaling on your bike.
What would you say to somebody who's getting sensory overloads and they don't know what to do? What would be your best advice?
You give them cuddles. Big cuddles. You gotta snuggle in tight in a blanket and rolled up and you just think peace.
I may be biased, but he is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
He's very cute. Catherine, we were talking before Ruben's video about the importance of friendship and solidarity. And I know, myself, raising a gorgeous little boy with additional needs who's got so many different things to process, you need that extra support and you need that extra understanding. But that's actually something that Care for the Family provide, isn't it?
We do. So one of our parenting projects is specialist support, befriending, for those who are parenting children with all kinds of additional needs. And it is so inspiring when I hear some of the stories. And it is peer-to-peer support. So it is parents who have experienced and walked some of that journey already themselves, who are maybe a little bit further ahead, who can share from their own experience. And our heart is kind of vulnerability and to say, this is not just you walking this path, and there are others that can come along and provide help and support. And there's loads of information on our website as well. So I'd love people just to check all of that out. And
yeah,
get some support.
absolutely. Because actually, I think the heart behind that is feeling understood, isn't it? And I mean, that's a major alleviator of stress when somebody is able to understand you and see what's going on and I think the hope of that as well, because I know there are times for me where I reach to find what's further down the line, like who else has been where I've been before, to just give that little bit of hope, of how you can kind of move forward. So that will be really helpful. We'll make sure that we get a link up for that as well. Yeah. But Ruben he's talking about some of those ways that he tries to manage stress. And I think one of the really interesting ones, because, from a child's point of view, what is really helpful, and he just keeps coming back to two things. One of them is quiet.
Yeah.
Just think. Yeah. And he just says that constantly, think. And there is that moment, that kind of sense of being present in the moment that we just really need to find. We've kind of touched a little bit on that, I know. But also that sense of affection, snuggling tight, have a big cuddle, just shrink the world into quietness a little bit. Take a moment to just be still and not be overwhelmed. And that's like a really helpful advice, I think.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see how kind of insightful he is and how actually he is able to tune in and know what works for him and what he really needs. And for him to be able to express that in a way that in his own way must be really reassuring for you as his mum to be able to know how to kind of step in and do that kind of co-regulation that we've talked about. I think it's just really fascinating that a lot of what he was saying was body-based stuff.
Yeah.
Getting on his bike, being able to, like we said earlier, about kind of moving your body into a state and actually riding a bike is quite rhythmic. You know, you're going round and round, it's that motion. And we know that in terms of kind of brain development that anything that is rhythmic, so bouncing, that's why kids bounce on the beds before bedtime, I guess. It's, it's them trying to get back into a state of regulation. So kind of bouncing on a trampoline, for example, or, even bouncing on one of those yoga balls can be really helpful. So that kind of up and down motion or kind of linear motion, anything like that, it actually just starts to get the nervous system back into a place of kind of calm and regulation. So it's really fascinating that he instinctively knows that when he's stressed, he just needs to get on his bike and go for a ride.
It's interesting as well because, our kids, they're not born knowing, like we're not born knowing. And so we actually have to help them, don't we? It has to be teamwork. We have to help them get curious and find out those things that are going to help them.
And every child is different.
Yeah.
And I think as their parents, as their mums, no one knows them like we do, no one loves them like we do. And working out what works for them with their personality at their life stage. So maybe there's someone that needs a lot of quiet, maybe they need friends around them, maybe they need some music. What is it that's going to help them switch off? And I think something I was often quick to do was not to really take their stress seriously, because from an adult perspective, it just didn't seem a very big deal.
Yeah.
One of my children got so stressed going to a new school about where to put his lunchbox. Now, it seems such a silly thing. And I thought, it's all right, they'll tell you. But actually, it was something that really bothered him. And so when I finally realised, taking the time to go and see the teacher and say, this is bothering him. And of course, it was easy to sort out. And not all their fears and stresses will be so easy to resolve. But I think listening and giving them that empathy goes a long, long way.
It's funny you say that, because when I listened to Reuben making the video, there were things to me that was like, well, I knew that sound stressed you out. I knew you didn't like people chomping their food, but I didn't realise quite how much. And as soon as I understood that more insightfully, I did actually make some changes. And I was like, okay, do you know what? It's not helpful for us always to be, I understand now why it stresses you out if I lock horns with your sister, because that noise is stressing you out, that kind of toing and froing. And I guess it's really tuning in and listening to our kids, isn't it? And taking it seriously, like you say, because, to me, fireworks in the evening aren't a big deal, but clearly to you they are. And so then if that's what's causing your stress, that's kind of what we need to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does go back to that tuning in, doesn't it? Like we kind of hopefully that's a message that we've repeated throughout this series. But really understanding our children, helping them to feel seen, really acknowledge their stress, acknowledge how they might be feeling. And it's only by doing that and connecting with them on that way that they then feel more able to, kind of be able to let us know when they are stressed, and they're more able to kind of come to us and express what it is that's bothering them and what they might need from us.
It's been a really interesting conversation to talk to you about. I feel heard. I feel understood. So thank you very much for joining. It's been really good to speak to you about. I hope you guys have had a really helpful time with us as well today. Don't forget, if you want to stay with all what's going on at the Mum Show and the other resources Care for the Family have, then you can follow the website below and go and have a look at that. And please do remember that you are very welcome to check out the support available from Care for the Family for those raising children with additional needs. In the meantime, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.